production. Pavement circumstance is one of the maximum crucial elements that affecting the performance of using and protection for the state user. A variety of pavement condition indicates are obtained and used to conduct pavement management assessment. The best alternative for pavement repair under current condition are subgrade improvement and pavement type replacement with rigid pavement. The road chosen for this study was Jalan Keluang in Pait Raja, which had a very poor surface condition.
Literature review. This is a study that took place along the road in front of University Tun Hussein on Malaysia in Johor for 10 samples, each of which was 100 meters long. Minor road damage such as alligator cracking, potholes, bleedings, and other issues have been discovered. Several samples will be used to classify the road damage. The Pavement Condition Index (PCI) is calculated using the data collected, and it will serve as a guide for the bill of quantities used to repair the road. Method of determining the kind of road pavement and the degree of damage that has occurred, and it can be used as a reference in the maintenance sector. This method approach only provides information on pavements conditions at the times of the survey and cannot predict future conditions. However, by conducting condition survey on a regular basis, information on pavement conditions can be used to predict future performance and provide a more complete measurement input. Last but not least, the degree of surface roughness determines the likelihood of functional failure. Fatigue, consolidation, or shear can cause structural failure in a flexible pavement, which can occur in the subgrade, subbase, base course, or surface.
Hi, Assalamualaikum. My name is Muhammad Adib bin Wazarul. I will present about objective. So first is this project is to determine the road and the pavement condition using the PCI. Next is to propose a suitable action for the maintenance activities, including the estimation of the construction cost. Last but not least is to determine the current status of the pavement and identify the type of defects.
Next is methodology. The route that was picked as a sample for this group project is depicted in the plan view above. Courtesy of Google Maps, the Pavement Condition Index (PCI) method was used to assess the damage to the pavement, which was measured in 10 100-meter samples. Determine the severity of the distress in each sample using the Pavement Condition Index (PCI) method, then enter how much is on the Pavement Condition Survey for each sample. First, using the graph deduct value curve as at ASTM D6433-07, calculate the total and density in percent to determine the deduct value. Next, the second step is to compute the maximum permissible number of deduct meter for each sample after determining the distress and deduct value. Next, the third step is to determine the maximum corrected deduct value CDV. Get the value CDV by referring to the graph total deduct value ASTM D6433-07 and finding the value of Q. The Pavement Condition Index for each sample is the fourth step. Finally, for each sample, prepare a summary report by designating the level of condition and making recommendations. After executing the PCI test and implementing the recommendations of the local villagers, the road repair and improvement can be noticed.
For the data analysis, for the criteria of the road, some criteria are used to identify the failure of the chosen road area. As a result, the likelihood of pavement failure is high, necessitating regular maintenance. So, we classify of the road failure. First, alligator cracking. Second, longitudinal and transverse. Third, weathering and raveling. Fourth, patching and utility cut patching. And the last, collect the data need to calculate the PCI index.
Hi, Assalamualaikum. My name is Omadi bin Zarul. My number matric is AF200089. Okay, so now I will present about calculation. So as we shown, this is the formula that we use. I equals to N over M. N is the total number of the sample unit insertion, and another one, and minimum number of sample units to be inspected. So as you can see, 20 divided by 9 is 22. And sample unit to be inspected are 1, 3, 5, 7, and 9. So next, okay, this is the sample one. This table is to determine the distance and the deduct value. So we can see this is sample one. This is the maximum allowable number of deduct. So we get in 5.78. So the maximum corrected deduct value we get in 70 by the see the graph in figure B45. Okay, this is the table that we get for maximum CDV. This is using to determine the pavement condition index. And we get PCI equal to 35. Based on the rating of PCI, the value is 35. This is poor and major rehabilitation is needed. Okay. Next, this is a sample 3. As you can see, the maximum number of deduct we get 4.67. The maximum corrected deduct value we get 76. Okay, to determine the pavement condition index, we get 14 by using the formula. Based of the rating, this section is very poor and upgrade needed except value serviceable. Furthermore, this is for the sample 5. You can see the maximum allowable number of deducts we get 3.94. For the maximum corrected deduct value we get 48. And to determine pavement condition index we get around 30. So based on the rating, this section is poor and major rehabilitation is needed. Other than that, this is for sample 7. As you can see, the maximum allowable number of deducts we get 4.58. Maximum corrected deduct value we get 80. Based on the rating for PCI value is 16. This section is very poor and upgrade needed except very serviceable. Last but not least, for the sample 9, we can see that we get maximum allowable number of deducts is 3.94. Maximum corrected deduct value we get 75 based on the graph from figure B45. So the pavement we get is around 18. This section is very poor and upgrade needed except barely serviceable. So by the 5 sample, we can get the average of the pavement condition index. We add and we divide by 5, we will get 20.6. Based on the rating for PCI value, 20.6 is poor. And the construction significant renewable and upgrade needed except barely serviceable. That's all, thank you.
Next is discussion on the result. From the result, the average of pavement condition index (PCI) value is 20.6, which is the road in the serious condition. The level of service is LOSF. The maintenance activity for the road is reconstruction. Reconstruction is the removal and rebuilding of all, including subgrade or part of the road pavement using new material and new construction specification. Pavement that have failed severely are usually those where deterioration has been allowed to occur without maintenance.
Further investigation is needed to determine which type of reconstruction need to be done, whether full depth reconstruction or partial depth reconstruction.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Nur Izzati binti Muhammad Basri with metric number AF190181. Now I'm going to present about the maintenance or rehabilitation method to improve the PCI of the sections of Keluang Road in Parit Raja. As we can see, the information in Table 1, which is asphalt concrete pavement distress types and M&R alternatives, is used as a guide to determine the appropriate maintenance method. This table presents the feasible maintenance methods for each distress type at a given severity level. For sample 1, the PCI value obtained for sample 1 is 25 based on the calculation. Hence, this section is categorized as poor condition and major rehabilitation is required to improve the road. So, as per the value of PCI following recommendation for distress type, alligator cracking, edge cracking, patching and utility cut patching found in this section of road can be made on the basis of table 1 from the previous slide. For sample 3, based on the calculation, the PCI value obtained is 14. Therefore, this section is categorized as very poor condition and upgrade needed except barely serviceable is required to improve the road. So as per the value of PCI following recommendation for distress type alligator cracking, lane or shoulder drop off, patching and utility cut patching, potholes and shoving found in this section of road can be made on the basis of table 1. For sample 5, based on the calculation, the PCI value obtained is 30. Consequently, this section is categorized as poor condition and major rehabilitation is required to improve the road. So, as per the value of PCI following recommendation for distress type alligator cracking, bleeding, and patching and utility cut patching found in this section of road can be made on the basis of table 1 from the previous slide. Sample 7, based on the calculation, the PCI value obtained is 16. As a result, this section is categorized as very poor condition and upgrade needed except barely serviceable is required to improve the road. So, as per the value of PCI following recommendation for distress type alligator cracking, longitudinal and transverse cracking, patching and utility cut patching found in this section of road can be made on the basis of table 1. For the last, which is sample 9, based on the calculation, the PCI value obtained is 20.6. In consequence, this section is categorized as poor condition and reconstruction significant renewal and upgrade needed except barely serviceable is required to improve the road. So, as per the value of PCI following recommendation for distress type alligator cracking and patching and utility cut patching found in this section of road can be made on the basis of table 1. In conclusion, in this study, the visual inspection approach was used to examine a high-traffic road corridor, namely sections of the Keluang Road in Parit Raja. To determine a specific section of pavement distribution, the Pavement Condition Index, also known as PCI system, was implemented. The road segment rating has been discovered to be mostly poor and very poor with PCI ranging from 14 to 30. Table 1 from Pavement Maintenance Management 1982 is used as a guide to determine which the most appropriate maintenance method. For each distress type at a certain severity level, the tables show possible maintenance approaches. Alligator cracking, beading, patching and utility cut patching, longitudinal and transverse cracking, potholes, lane or shoulder drop-off, shoving and edge cracking are the pavement distress types found on this road. In order to calculate the road surface condition using this PCI approach, ASTM D6433 must be used as a reference standard.